Spirit. Amen. This is already the fourth week of the Great Fast, St. John Climacus. One of my favorite saints, and I think certainly my favorite book. He wrote the book called The Ladder of Divine Ascent. And because he's a venerable saint, we have the reading about the Beatitudes. Generally, that's what's done for venerable monastic fathers. And I want to talk about that a little bit, but in context of the first reading. And that first reading was about the healing of the boy who was a lunatic. Now, the reason why he was a lunatic is because the demons, they play tricks. So when the moon is full, they would be more active. The moon had nothing to do with it. They just wanted people to associate the moon with demonic activity. The demons do a lot of things like that. So this boy was possessed from the time he was a child. And the demon tried to kill him by throwing him in fire, throwing him in water. The father was beside himself. So when Jesus and his 3 disciples were up on the mountain, Mount Tabor, when the transfiguration occurred, 40 days before the Good Friday, the father brought him to the other disciples, and they weren't able to cure him. So then Jesus and his disciples come off the mountain, and the father says they couldn't cure him, they didn't have the strength. And he says this curious phrase to the man. So he says here that, where is it? Oh, here it is. First, the man says, if you can do anything, have compassion on us. And he says, as to the if you can do anything, it's basically a figure of speech that some translations don't really catch. As to the if thou canst do anything, if thou can believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. It's rather simple, we all know that. Problem solved, right? Just believe. Everything's good. Everything is possible for those who believe. We believe that. We believe that here. We don't believe that here. So the man says, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. And that's always resonated with me. Excuse me. Because we are believers and we are unbelievers. We are truth-telling liars. We are believing atheists. Because sometimes we go through life not believing that God will help us. Maybe we don't say it in such a way, but we don't have full confidence that God is really directing all of our lives, everything. And that's a hard thing to have. Now, we know we should. We know it's a sin, or maybe you don't know. It's a sin not to think that God is directing everything in your life, that his providence is over all, that he loves you in all things, and that you're never without him, that nothing escapes his notice. It's a sin to not think those things, or to think that he somehow can be fooled, or that somehow you don't have his help at various times. It's a sin. But more than a sin, it's so debilitating to have those thoughts. And how do you get rid of those thoughts? And there's a joke that we used to tell in my family when it was something that was hard to stop thinking about. Go into a corner and don't think of a big white bear. Pretty much impossible. So how do you have good thoughts? How do you believe? That's what we're trying to do. And that's what I hope you're trying to do here. To live as an Orthodox Christian, to experience God in such a way that nothing else is true to you. Everything else looks false, and only God looks true. Because God is the only one who's true. Everything else has some mixture of falsehood in it along with truth. Sometimes more falsehood than truth. So how do you have this experience? I've been talking about the purpose of Great Lent pretty much every single sermon. But the purpose of Great Lent is the purpose of our life. It's just this time is a little more concentrated, or it should be for you. If you're not concentrating a little bit more than you normally do, then you're wasting your time. You're really losing an opportunity. But there's good news. You still have basically 2 weeks left before Holy Week, so you have 3 weeks before Pascha. So you still can get on the horse, and you can still struggle. But the purpose of Great Lent, like the purpose of life, is to have God completely in the heart. And nothing else. No darkness, no anything else. And if only God is in the heart, then only belief is in the heart. Only peace is in the heart. Only love is in the heart. There's no darkness. There's no being out of sorts. There's none of the sins that oppress us. There's none of those thoughts that oppress us. It's just God. He's completely manifest, and we completely believe. That's what we're trying to have. That's what we're trying to have happen. And this man had this problem. He believed in God. He believed that God could indeed heal his son, but his son had been sick for many years, perhaps a decade or more, and he'd never been healed. So the man believed, but he didn't believe. And the Lord did not, he rebuked him for this. He rebuked actually the people around, but also the man around. How long am I going to be with you? How long will I remain with you? This is actually also an indication that the Lord said he was going to be leaving soon. Because this was basically about 40 days, less than 40 days before Good Friday. Because Mount Tabor, Transfiguration, was 40 days before Good Friday, and they were just coming off the mountain, so they were 1 or 2 days off the mountain, perhaps, maybe 1 day off the mountain. So what is it that we do, or what can we do, so that we can learn to believe? Well, the gospel, the second gospel, teaches us some of those things. Now, I'm not just talking about all of the Beatitudes. I mean, obviously, all of these things will help you to believe. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God, of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted, etc., etc. Of course, if you do those things, then you're holy, you're a saint. But what I think that we have to understand is that our efforts will help us to change our heart. That's the understanding of asceticism that Orthodoxy has and nobody else has. Everybody else has an understanding that asceticism is unnecessary and it's cultish and it's dangerous, or that it's just for monks. That's a popular one among Orthodox Christians who don't understand their faith at all. Or they think that asceticism is required in such a way that God will not receive you unless you have these ascetical feats, which is basically treating God like a pagan god. Like I recently said, the volcano god. You're appeasing the volcano god. Or our God is not the volcano god. Our God is the one who became like us so that we become like him. Our God is the one who holds us in the palm of his hand. Our God is the one who loves us completely and without change, no matter what we do or do not do. But still, it's necessary to struggle after virtue. Now, the Lord said in the gospel about the demoniac, when the disciples came and said, "Why couldn't we cast him out?" He said, "Well, it's because of your unbelief. You don't have enough faith." And then he tells them that this kind does not come out except by prayer and fasting. Now, implicit in there, in understanding, in the church's understanding, that other people don't understand because they just read those words and that's all those words mean to them, prayer and fasting, and then they throw out fasting because, I mean, who fasts? I mean, I guess Catholics fast sometimes, huh? But we don't want to be like Catholics, so let's not fast. And then a lot of Orthodox don't fast because they weren't raised that way, and fasting's a little bit difficult, and they don't see the connection between fasting and actual virtue. They don't get it because they've never done it, and it's just a legalistic thing for them, so they don't fast. So there is prayer and fasting, but that's in the context of struggle. It's all in order to struggle. If you pray with vigor, improve your prayer slowly, a little bit at a time, and if you fast, you get stronger. You just do. Now, if you don't know that this is the case, then try it. Perhaps if you've been doing it, maybe you haven't been doing it long enough. Or maybe you haven't been doing it with enough oomph, enough effort, and an expectation that your prayer and fasting with your labor will help you to have your heart open. That's the whole point. The whole point of all of the virtues, living a life of virtue, and obedience to God and all of the commandments. The whole point of all of it is that the heart would be filled with God. That's it. It's not so God would receive us. That's pagan ideal of God. It is that our heart would be in such a condition that as the light of God shines upon our heart receives that light. The light's here. The uncreated light's here. Probably none of us, maybe a baby, might. But other than that, none of us are seeing the uncreated light. And yet it's present, always present. God is always present. The heart has to change in such a way that when the light comes, which the light is always coming, the light is always here, that the heart perceives and opens to God. And, as I've said to you before, one of my favorite psalm verses, a man shall draw nigh and the heart is deep, and God shall be exalted. The heart is deep enough to contain all of God. Now figure that out. How can that be? That the one who created the universe and is bigger than the universe, is inside and outside of the universe, can be contained by a very small, lowly creature in the universe. Completely. That's possible. Our scriptures tell us that is possible. And all of the efforts that we're doing are so that our heart opens up just a little bit. Now God will do the rest. He'll open it up the rest. But we have to make that effort to make that beginning to crack the door. And my heart goes out to this man, as it does to you and everyone else that everyone that I know, and myself too, that we want to believe, but we don't quite completely believe. It's because there's just something missing in us. So you have to just do the things that you can do so that things are not missing. It's very important. I'm a big proponent on this. I've talked about this many times. You must do what you can do. The problem with people is they don't do what they can do. And then they go, I'm not happy. I don't believe. I have trouble with my prayers. I'm lazy getting up in the morning, etc., etc., etc. Whatever their problems are, because they're not doing what they can do. Do what you can do. So can you be completely poor in spirit, completely humble? Okay, I guess maybe you can't. I can't. Can you keep your mouth shut? Can you not brag? Can you be obedient doing some menial task that you don't want to do? Can you not hit send when you're about to send a really disgusting text message? Can you do that? Maybe you can do that. That's part of being poor in spirit. Now, being poor in spirit is much bigger than that. But at least it's a beginning for us. And with all of the Beatitudes, you can have an approximation of them. Maybe a very small approximation, but it's still an approximation. So, for instance, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Well, here it goes. The pot's getting higher and higher. Nobody can ever win. I'm going to tell you, how can you mourn? With frustrations, right? Huh? Maybe you don't feel it completely in your heart, but you can do something, huh? You can do prostrations. You can do the prayer of St. Ephrem. You can come to confession. You can try to get better. It's really marvelous. This is the secret sauce of Christianity that people don't know about, really. Do what you can do, and then you'll start to be able to do more. And now you got to do that part too, as you increase in ability. And you just get better. And eventually, it's not a matter of trying to believe. It's a matter of just knowing the truth. Do we have to try to believe in the sun? The sun was just coming up as I was coming to church. It was halfway, the red orb. And by the time I've driven a half a mile, it was all the way up. Did I need to force myself to believe that the sun was coming up? It was very obvious to me. Nobody had to tell me. I didn't have to argue with myself. It was very manifestly obvious. That's how obvious God will be to the heart that has Him, that is possessed by God. Everything's obvious. It's obvious that everything is according to the providence of God. We're in the midst of a terrible time. We've had these terrible things. They're coming. There's more coming. We had COVIDism. Now we have the war with Ukraine. The world pivots from one thing to another. maybe back to another after that, a new thing after that. We have loved ones, or we know of people who have loved ones who are at risk in Ukraine. And even in Russia now, there's been some incursions into Russia, at least with bombs. And there's a lot of anxiety. Absolutely. Rather than just try to have an opinion about it, why don't we just beg God to help us? Beg God to help our loved ones. We're going to do a 11 right after liturgy for Ukraine. Because people are dying in Ukraine. It's a terrible thing. But we can't do anything about it if we don't give our hearts to it. Because what you think on a social media platform doesn't mean squat. Doesn't mean anything. What really matters is, do you pray with your heart, begging God to deliver your people? Because they're your people. I don't have any Ukrainian blood in me. I don't have any Russian blood in me, but I sure enough got a Russian soul. That's for sure. So they're my people. For sure. I hope that you think they're your people too. Whether you're from Ukraine or from Belarus or Russia or not. Whether you speak with a Russian accent or Ukrainian accent or Alabama accent, it doesn't matter. They're your people. So pray for your people. And as we enter into this living more and more according to virtue, we just believe more. Instead of having these cynical thoughts like this war is going to go on forever, there's going to be countless dead, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. That's exhausting. If I had the authority right now, I would command all of you to not watch any more news or listen to any more news. I would like to be able to do that. But none of you are going to obey me if I did. So I won't. I'll try to be like the king in the Little Prince. I only want to give commands that I know you're going to follow. See? That's what he did. He only commanded when he knew it was going to be obeyed. But that's my suggestion to you. Cool it with it. But say your prayers, do your prostrations, say the canon to the Theotokos every single day. That's what's been told to do. But we've been told to do that by the patriarch. So we should. We've been told to do prostrations. Read a chapter of the Gospel and 3 prostrations by Metropolitan Onufri. Maybe you want to do that too. Do it all. That would be a much better use of your time than convincing somebody that they're wrong on the internet. I don't think it's ever been done. Maybe you'll be the first. So I really do suggest that to you. Just knock it off with that stuff. Instead, pray, fast, struggle to have God in your heart. And then this problem of, I believe, but help my unbelief, it won't be a problem anymore. Because you'll just be living according to God. And God is present. And you feel Him. Completely. In every way. This is the formula for us to be able to have belief. We can't manufacture it. We just have to live according to what God has given us and according to our abilities. Each one of us has different abilities. Some of us might be able to do 100 prostrations a day. Some of us can barely do 3. Some of us can't do any because of our back. But we can do something instead of a prostration. Instead of just saying, I can't do prostrations, so I'm just going to watch TV. It's not a good idea. I can't do prostrations, so I'm going to do bows. Or maybe I'm going to pray an extra canon. Or something. I mean, you can find accommodations that will really, really help you to be able to truly believe. So it's incumbent upon us really not to believe. It's not incumbent upon us to be able to somehow change our brain in some way that we believe possibly in the right way. That's not incumbent upon us. We don't have the power to do that. We do have the power to act according to the things that we do know and that we do believe according to our abilities. And not one of us is completely doing that. So if we were to do that, act according to the things we can do, don't be too easy on yourself now. You can do a whole lot more than you think you can do. And you do the things you can do, you do better. And you feel God in your heart. And there's not a question of belief anymore. Now, there's still a lot of things going on. There's anxiety and there's just a lot of, it's going to be an interesting interesting decade, isn't it? It's going to be very interesting. The most interesting in our lives, I think, including people who are 90 and have been through World War II. I think it's going to be more interesting than that. And if that's the case, well, then it is the case. But if we live according to God, if we just struggle to do the things we can do, we get better. It's as simple as that. It really is. It's very simple. May God bless us. May God help us. God bless you.